There's a principle that has guided me for years, and it's simple enough that anyone can understand it. It's called the law of averages. The law of averages says this: do enough of anything, and a pattern will appear. Wins and losses aren't random forever. Over time, the numbers even out. Now, most people want success to come quick. They want every effort to pay off, every attempt to work, every seed to grow. But life doesn't work that way. Sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes it's no. Sometimes the door opens, sometimes it closes. And if you judge your future by one or two attempts, you'll miss the bigger truth. The truth is in the averages. If you talk to one person and they say no, that doesn't mean failure. If you talk to 10 people and 8 say no, you might be discouraged. But if 2 say yes, and you keep repeating the process, you'll discover the ratio. Maybe it's 1 out of 5. Maybe it's 3 out of 10. But once the pattern appears, you have something priceless: predictability. See, the law of averages levels the field. It means you don't have to count on luck. You don't have to wait for the stars to align. You just have to keep adding to the numbers, because the law is always working. Over time, the results will reflect the ratio. And that's the principle that changes everything. Because once you understand it, you stop getting discouraged by rejection. You stop taking no as final. You stop quitting too soon. Instead, you start looking at each attempt as one more step toward the inevitable yes. I'll tell you something important. This principle doesn't just apply to business. It applies to every part of life. Relationships, learning, personal growth. It's all governed by the same law. You read enough books, you'll find the insights that change your thinking. You meet enough people, you'll find the friendships that last a lifetime. You practice enough times, you'll develop the skill. The averages always show up if you give them enough chances. So here's what the law of averages tells us. Your job is not to control outcomes. Your job is to increase activity. Keep planting, keep trying, keep reaching. Don't measure success by the single attempt. Measure it by the pattern that emerges when you've done it often enough. That's the principle. And once it sinks in, it will change how you approach your work, your goals, your entire philosophy of success. If the law of averages is true, and it is, then the key to making it work for you is simple: activity. No activity, no averages. You can't expect the numbers to balance out if you never get into the game. Every call you make, every conversation you start, every door you knock on, every seed you plant, it all adds to the total. And here's what that means. The more you try, the more chances you create. The law of averages rewards activity, not waiting. I remember talking with a man who told me he was discouraged because nobody was saying yes. I asked him how many people he had spoken to. He said 3. Just 3. Now think about it. 3 is not a test of the law of averages. 3 is not a pattern. That's just dabbling. The law doesn't work with dabbling. It works with volume, with persistence, with repetition. If you play the game enough times, the ratios will show up. 1 in 5, 2 in 10. Whatever the number is, it won't reveal itself until you've put in enough attempts. And once you see the number, you can start planning your success around it. But the door to that discovery is activity. If the farmer plants one seed and it doesn't grow, he doesn't give up on farming. He plants fields full of seed. Some sprout, some don't. That's the law of averages at work. But only the farmer who plants enough gets to see the harvest. The man who plants one seed and waits has no harvest at all. The same is true in business, in sales, in relationships. The person who makes one call and stops will always be disappointed. The person who keeps dialing, keeps showing up, keeps starting conversations, sooner or later, the law of averages begins to reward him. And here's the beauty of it. The activity itself is what sets the law in motion. Every attempt is a vote for the future. Every effort is a step toward the inevitable yes. You don't know which attempt will produce it, but you know that enough attempts will. So if you want the averages on your side, you have to earn it with action. You have to stay in motion. Don't wait for perfect timing. Don't wait for guaranteed success. Just start. The law won't reveal itself until you give it numbers to work with. And activity is the trigger. The more you try, the more the law of averages starts working in your favor. Now let's look at what happens once you've put in enough activity. The law of averages begins to reveal its pattern. Maybe it's 1 in 5 who say yes. Maybe it's 3 in 10 who respond. Whatever the ratio is, once it shows itself, you've just gained an incredible advantage. Predictability. See, most people think success is guesswork. They think it's all about chance or luck. But the law of averages removes the mystery. Once you know the pattern, you can start to plan with confidence. If you know that 1 out of 5 will say yes, all you have to do is talk to 20 people and you can expect 4 agreements. That's not luck. That's math. This is what turns effort into a science. It means you no longer ride the emotional roller coaster of one person's response. A no is not the end of the story. It's simply part of the ratio. You don't stop, you just keep going until the numbers work themselves out. I once met a man in sales who was constantly frustrated. He took rejection personally. Every no felt like a blow to his confidence. Then I showed him how to look at it differently. I told him, if your ratio is 1 in 10, then every no you hear is not rejection. It's progress. Each no is just moving you closer to the next yes. Once he understood that, rejection lost its sting. Instead of dreading it, he started counting it. 10 conversations meant 1 result, and he could predict it with certainty. That's the power of patterns. They let you stop guessing and start working the numbers. When you know the averages, you know the outcome is inevitable. Effort plus time produces results. Not just sometimes, but every time you stay consistent. It's like a casino. The house doesn't win every hand. Sometimes players take the pot, but the casino understands the averages. And over time, those averages guarantee their success. They don't have to win every spin or every roll. They just have to let the math play out. That's why the house always wins in the long run. The same principle applies to your life and your business. You don't have to win every day. You don't have to succeed in every conversation. You just have to stay active long enough for the law of averages to deliver its promise. Once you see the pattern, you gain a new kind of confidence. You don't need to hope anymore, you know. You don't need to wonder anymore. You can measure. And that certainty is what allows you to keep going without fear. That's how the law of averages makes success predictable. The law of averages is powerful, but it only works if you stay with it long enough. Persistence is what unlocks the payoff. Most people never see the law reward them, not because the law failed, but because they quit too soon. Here's the truth. Averages only show up over time. You can't test them in a single day or with a handful of attempts. The ratio needs room to breathe. You have to give the numbers enough space to balance out. Think about baseball. Even the best hitters in the world strike out, pop up, or get thrown out more times than they get on base. But over a season, their batting average tells the real story. 3 hits out of 10 at bats makes you one of the greats. But if that player judged himself by 1 game, he'd quit. If he judged himself by 1 strikeout, he'd never step back up to the plate. Success belongs to the player who sticks around long enough for the average to work in his favor. I'm telling you, it's the same everywhere. The first week may feel discouraging. The second month may feel slow, but the law is still at work, quietly balancing, quietly revealing the ratio. And if you persist, you'll see it unfold. I've watched so many people quit just before the numbers swing back their way. They hear too many no's, they face too many setbacks, and they walk away without realizing the yes was just around the corner. That's the tragedy of impatience. The law was ready to reward them, but they gave up too early. Persistence turns rejection into inevitability. Instead of hearing no and thinking failure, persistence lets you hear no and think, I'm one step closer. Instead of quitting after 10 tries, persistence says, I'll try 100 if that's what it takes, because the averages guarantee the result. And here's something important. Persistence isn't just about endurance, it's about belief. Belief that the law is real. Belief that effort multiplied by time always produces results. That belief keeps you moving when emotions tempt you to stop. The law of averages is like gravity. It doesn't stop working just because you're tired. It doesn't disappear because you had a rough week. It keeps operating. The only question is whether you'll stay in the game long enough to let it pay off for you. That's the role of persistence. It's the bridge between effort and reward. Now let's talk about how to apply the law of averages in your own life. Knowing the principle is one thing, using it is another. The first step is to track your activity. Don't just guess, write it down. How many calls did you make? How many conversations did you start? How many times did you attempt? Numbers don't lie. Once you track, you'll begin to see the patterns emerge. Maybe 1 in 5 turns into a yes. Maybe 1 in 7. Whatever the ratio, it's your personal average. And once you know it, you can plan your success around it. The second step is to stay consistent. The law doesn't work for the person who tries hard once in a while. It works for the person who puts in steady effort over time. 10 calls every day beats 50 calls once a month. Small, repeated actions activate the averages. Third, you must accept rejection as part of the math. This is where so many people get it wrong. They hear no and take it personally. They think it means they're not good enough or not cut out for it. But no is not a verdict. It's just part of the ratio. If your average is 1 in 10, then 9 no's are not failures. They're necessary steps to get to the 1 yes. That perspective changes everything. And finally, stay in motion. The law of averages is not for the idle. It doesn't reward the thinker. It rewards the doer. It doesn't respond to intentions. It responds to attempts. You can't sit at home waiting for the numbers to balance. You have to give the law something to work with. So here's the application. Track your numbers, watch the pattern, accept the no's, and keep going. If you do, the law of averages guarantees that success becomes only a matter of time. That's the beauty of it. You don't need to be the smartest. You don't need to be the most talented. You just need to play long enough with enough activity for the averages to do their job. And if you commit to that, the results will come inevitably.